So what I was trying to say earlier is uh, the language in this game is really interesting. I mean, when you look at, well, I'll start off by saying the Mesolithic era is not even remotely my area of expertise. But the there's a lot in this game that is not historically accurate, but is taken from different relative time periods or different locations, just for kind of wow factor and stuff, which is understandable. You want to make a fun video game and all that, and you want it to have, I mean, especially like the Sabretooth up there, right? This game, Oros is kind of based in like Central Eastern Europe, sort of, but Smilodons, saber-toothed tigers, they were not native to Eastern Europe. In fact, they weren't there at all. They were in the Americas. So their presence here is completely false. But you can't have a freaking cave, you can't have a caveman game without saber-tooths. You just can't. I mean, it would be boring as fuck. Everybody would be like, why can't they just put saber-tooths? It's like, oh, it's not historically accurate. They're like, well, who gives a shit? It's that kind of thing, right? I mean, no, they're not in this area, but who cares? They're awesome. So that's kind of the thing. Like, most of the inaccuracies are just to make it seem more real. Like, because, even if... That's kind of the way this works, basically, is... set as quick heal. Sorry. That's kind of the way this works, is basically... like... If it's one of those situations where if you were to make it 100% accurate, people wouldn't believe it because it didn't have the tropes that they expected it to have, So like if they made this 100% accurate, the cave paintings, for example, the cave paintings in this game are way more advanced than they ever would have been in this time period. But these are the kind of cave paintings that people expect to be here. So that's what they put in, Like, if they put something else, people would think it, it didn't fit. It would take them out of the experience. So, it's a give and take, You just... I mean, you can tell, like, there's a lot of stuff that's inaccurate, but you can tell in the spots where people don't notice, basically, in the places they don't look, they put a lot of fucking effort in. For example, the language. The language... I mean, not just the Winja, but the Udam and the Izila, they all have their own language. I mean, the language of the Udam and the Winja is... They're basically two different dialects of the same language. And that's actually... But the Izila actually have a different language. And that's actually reflected in-game, as crazy as it sounds. Because basically... So... Takar understands all the Winja because they all speak the same language, but he also understands all the Udam. They just kind of speak with a funny accent to it. But the Izila, he basically doesn't really understand what they're saying at all. He picks up a few words here and there because they share some similarities, but for the most part, he doesn't understand them at all. And that's just such a crazy detail. Like, they didn't have to do that. But they literally made up, not one... but two languages, and one of them has two different dialects for this game. I mean, they literally could have just gotten away with grunting and stuff, and everyone would have been fine with it. But they made two completely unique, distinct languages, and they are all historically based. They're all based on, what is it? It's, oh god. I had the thing here somewhere. It's Indo-European languages, like not prehistoric, but basically as far back as they could go, Indo-European languages. So they're like the real deal. I mean, as real a deal as we will ever have. That's what these are. And I mean, that is just insane. It's insane when you think about it. the level of detail going into that. I mean, God, it's interesting with Ubisoft, man. Like they don't always get stuff right, but they really care about the world building. I mean, world building is one thing that they have always done very, very well. I mean, in all their Assassin's Creed games, they always have flaws and this and that. But the worlds that they're in are always absolutely incredible. Same thing here, man. I mean, they really put the time in. And it's just hilarious because it's always on stuff that you just don't really see or pay attention to. I mean, like in the big flashy things, like in the Assassin's Creed games, you see some giant city and you're like, oh my god, that's amazing. But like, nobody would ever see the language in this. I mean, they know the language is there, but they don't pay attention to that shit. So it's really fascinating to... What, can I make more arrows, please? How do I make arrows? There's like a... Hang on. There's like a quick craft. Oh, there we go. There we go. There we go. That's what I needed. Anyway, it's anytime you play a Ubisoft game, they're always fun for the most part. I mean, there are definitely some that their fun runs out pretty quickly. But if you play a Ubisoft game, you have to do some research on it, because when you see the amount of effort that they put in, you will be blown away. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.